Clash of the Classics.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Horsepower for an Hour. Welcome back to Clash of the Classics. It's a whole new week. I'm Donnie. I'll be your guide here for the next few minutes with this all-new feature of the 1969 Buick GS 400. Last week we spent some time looking at the 1969 AMC, and I thought this week it'd be kind of cool to stay in the year 1969. A lot of cool cars. In fact, I cannot think of a 1969 model car that isn't cool, especially this Buick GS 400. But let's do a little business first. These battles, these interviews, these features, each and every week are continually made possible by the largest automatic transmission network in the world. They are the Automatic Transmission Rebuilders Association. And if you don't remember anything I say today, try to remember this one thing. If you've got a transmission problem, if you have a transmission concern, you even think there's a transmission type concern with your car, before you do anything, before you go anywhere, check them out at atra.com. They have got a service member network that stretches coast to coast. If your car is having transmission trouble, you don't want to go anywhere other than an authorized ATRA service provider, and you can find them there at atra.com. All right, let's jump right into it now, talking all about the 1969 Buick GS 400. Now, here's a car that may not get a lot of attention, especially in the classics and in the muscle world, for a number of reasons, and a lot of it has to do with the exterior styling. A lot of people think it's more of a family car. We're going to talk about it with respect to its competition kind of a feel and more of its muscle kind of a platform. But you know, GM's mid-size cars we're in the second year of the current styling cycle, and each division, you'll remember, was maneuvering to kind of increase their whole, I guess, muscle profile would be the best way to describe it. Chevy uncorked some special order Super Chevelles, you remember those, Oldsmobile headlined their Hearst editions of the 442. Pontiac made big news. It was a pulp culture inspired version of their GTO. But Buick didn't have a special model of its GS 400, but neither did that have any difference, or that they didn't stand pat on that. In fact, the GS 400 got standard functional hood scoops for 1969, and that was something that none of the higher profile corporate siblings, they didn't get it. The Cool Air induction system, and that's what it was called, the Cool Air induction systems, were used with a twin snorkel air cleaner with two, I guess, kind of foam muffs that sealed against the scoop openings. Buick said the system increased the peak horsepower by 8% and peak torque by a total of 6% over the entire RPM range, and that's a pretty bold statement. Though the car's base 400 cubic inch V8 retained that 340 horsepower rating that carried over from 1968. But now the base engine wasn't the only GS 400 mil that was available. New for 1969 were Stage 1, and then there was also the Stage 2 option. Stage 1 boosted output to pretty conservative rated 345 horsepower, had a high lift cam, 11-to-1 compression instead of the 10-1/4-to-1, and then a special carburetor and a fuel pump, and larger, low-restricted exhaust ports. Positive traction was included. 4-speed cars got 364 gears out back. The optional 3-speed automatic was modified for higher shift points. They kind of did some tweaking of the valve body. And that Turbo 400 was changed quite a bit. The Turbo 350, that was the very first year for the Turbo 350, was 1969, and it got some modifications to the hydraulic transfer plate back in those days. Pretty cool stuff. And then had 342s out back. The rare, and this is not one that we see much of, that's the Stage 2. That was made up of a 360 horsepower engine with an even hotter cam, and there were other kind of assorted enhancements with valve springs and so on and so forth. But true to Buick's nature, the Stage 1 was energetic, but it was untemperamental. Even the advertising line, Buick builds a premium performance machine, seemed a bit high-toned. But again, this car, the looks of the car didn't get a lot of notice because it kind of seemed like, and I'm sure we have pictures of it here on our YouTube channel, or as I'm speaking, you're able to see different pictures. Not the most sporty of looking cars that we've looked at here, especially in the 1969 model year. But definitely, I mean, for you Buick fans, I know that you guys will really like this car, and I liked it as well. I had kind of a larger back end. The rear quarter panels were a bit more bulbous, I guess you could call them, but still a pretty good looking car. And once again, today's Clash interview, today's Clash feature of the 1969 Buick GS 400, made possible by our friends out at ATRA, or the Automatic Transmission Rebuilders Association. Check them out at atra.com. But the Stage 1 engine feels like a good supercar compromise, and that's what Motor Trend kind of concurred. Power is all there for street running, especially when you put your foot in it and open all four barrels. That's what Motor Trend said in one of their articles back in 1969. The downshifting acceleration, I kind of thought, really put your bottom of the lower portion of your back right down into the seat. You could really feel a lot of low-end grunt. And that had to do with some of the 3.2 downshift calibrations on that transfer plate in the transmission. That worked really well. One distinct characteristic of the engine seems to be its smoother idle, because it's interesting because it had a bigger cam. Usually with a bigger cam you get more of a lope, but Buick did a good job of taming that whole feel down. It's not nearly as rough as similar cars with similar cam grinds. But definitely a nice car. This car wheelbase, 112 inches. Same as we talked about last week. You'll remember, or a couple weeks ago, we looked at a couple of cars. One of them was that 1968 Pontiac GTO, where they slimmed it down from 115 inches to 112. That became pretty much part and parcel for this time period, late 60s. This Buick GS 400 rolled in at 112 inches, made it for real nimble handling. The weight on this car, a little hefty at 4,070 pounds. Price was right at about $43.50 on the convertible model. The overhead V8 was the 400 cubic inch V8 engine with the 1 4-barrel carburetor, compression ratio right at 11:1. Horsepower was a modest but definitely capable 345 ponies with 440 pound-feet of low-end torque. Really nice as far as acceleration was concerned. Interior, to me, looked pretty good. Nice layout. Not necessarily as sporty or sport kind of feel as a lot of guys would have preferred, but I liked it. I did like that crossgate, or that Hurst grip style shifter that they used in the console. That was nice. 0 to 60 in 5.8 seconds, and it scooted through the quarter mile at 14.5 seconds, right at about 97 miles per hour. But again, I wanted to highlight and showcase this car because, number one, it's not a car that a lot of people take seriously in terms of its competition or in terms of its sport, because it, I guess for all intent and purposes, doesn't look like it. But I really like the Stage 1 and the Stage 2 engines that Buick included with some of these builds, especially with some of that Ram Air induction that they used. But nice car, 1969 Buick GS 400, definitely has my vote. I like this car. If we get a chance here, I'll speak with production, see if we can't get some pictures of the interior, because I'd like for you guys to see what I'm talking about. Could have been laid out a little bit differently that would have given it, again, my opinion, a bit more of a sport feel. But Buick did what they did. I like the car. Once again, thanks for hanging out with us today at Horsepower for an Hour here at our Clash Battles. It's all about the 1969 Buick GS 400, made possible by our friends at the Automatic Transmission Rebuilders Association, or simply the ATRA. Stick around. We're going to have a lot more coming up next week. Tune in for the 1969 Chevy Camaro Z28. That's going to be some fun. I've always liked that car. Have a good time talking about that. That car actually inspired even the newest Camaro. But that's all the time we have for today. It's been great hanging out with everybody. We'll talk to you next week.